Hello and welcome back to the Florida Men Gaming. My name is Furyan and today we're going to be playing Magic: The Gathering Arena. And by playing, we're going to be doing something different. But before we get started, I'd like to ask that you please like this video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. And if you're over there on Rumble, go ahead and smash that Rumble button. For today's video, we're going to be doing the Theorycraft for New Capenna deck showcase. These are decks that I'll be playing in upcoming videos that I think are worth giving a shot. We're doing this on the main account, and we're going to just take a look at a couple of different archetypes. There's a lot going on in this meta, and I'm just taking a look at some things that I think might be fun and interesting to try. So the first one we're going to look at is a second cast mono white build. This is centered around two specific cards, Monk of the Open Hand and the Clarion Spirit. What we've worked into this is a couple of Planeswalker answers to some problems we might run into. So, let's do a quick breakdown of the deck. In our 1-drop slot, we have a bunch of cards. The Battlefield Raptor, 4 copies, starts with flying and first strike, is a 1/2. 4 copies of Homestead Courage. This allows you to put a 1/1 counter on a target creature, and it gains vigilance until the end of turn. It also has flashback for the same cost as its initial cast, so for 2 mana you can put 2 1/1 counters on 1 creature or 1 1/1 counter on 2 creatures. With the Hopeful Initiate here, you have a really great enchantment removal piece that will also gain great advantage off removing the 1/1 counters from cards like Homestead Courage. The Monk of the Open Hand has the second cast, giving it a +1/+1 counter. Usher of the Fallen is a great 1-drop, which will be just, again, counter bait, but also a second cast trigger bait. In the 2-drop, we have Clarion Spirit, 4 copies. That is the other big engine in this deck. It creates a flying spirit token for every second, or whenever you cast your second spell. 4 copies of the Selfless Samurai. This will help protect more important pieces of our puzzle. 4 copies of Show of Confidence. This one, it doesn't have a lot that it can go off of, but I'm going to try and run it in tandem with Homestead Courage and see how it does. And then here's where we get a little spicier than usual. Most second cast decks are focused entirely on the second cast mechanic, and are pretty well dead in the water once that runs dry. So we're going to try running 4 copies of the Wandering Emperor to give us counters, create tokens, and exile tapped creatures, and 2 copies of Elspeth Resplendent. Elspeth is going to take our threats as they grow and grow and grow and give them more and more scary pieces with the +1, choose up to 1 target creature, put a +1/+1 counter, and flying, first strike, lifelink, or vigilance. So this will give us a really good edge if we can get her onto the battlefield to pump up some of our creatures that might already be growing pretty big. So that's deck 1. Let's take a quick look here at some of the other things that we've put together that we're theory crafting with that we're excited to give a try. Token Super Friend. So let's take a quick look at what we're doing here. This deck is all Planeswalkers for the most part. So, let's take a look at what we're trying to do. We're trying to go off with Kaya Geist Hunter, which the -2 ability on this card, it's a 3 mana Planeswalker. Until the end of turn, if 1 or more tokens would be created under your control, create twice that many instead. What creates tokens in our deck? Well, I'm glad you asked. We have the Wedding Announcement, 4 copies. 2 copies of the Wandering Emperor, who can create a token for -1. 2 copies of Sorin the Mirthless, who can create a token for -2. 2 copies of Elspeth Resplendent, who can create 5 with -7. 4 copies of Lolth the Spider Queen, who creates 2 tokens of the spider. Renin 7. Why? Because why don't you want another token? And Kaya the Inexorable, just because why not have some removal? To help us get there, to help us keep ourselves moving, we have Paladin class to slow them down. 4 copies of Circle of Confinement to hopefully keep the opponent creatures when it's early just pinned to the board. Hold for Ransom so that we can pin their creatures down until they get up to 7 mana. Shigeki the Jukai Visionary to help us dig for mana and pull threats back from the graveyard if they manage to start killing Planeswalkers. The Jukai Naturalist, 4 copies to help us with our Wedding Announcement and Circle of Confinement ramp. And our land base is a lot of dual lands from Midnight Hunt and Crimson Vow, a couple of pathways because I don't have the full pathway collections, and a couple of basics just in case we get Field of Ruin. I don't know how this deck is going to perform, but we're going to have a little bit of fun with it. Maybe we'll do an event with it as opposed to ladder play, and we'll just see what happens. Next deck in the list of things we want to try. Yes, I'm going to be that guy. This is the Dick Move deck. Welcome to Mob Anvil, my take on it. So what we're running here, 4 copies of Ob Nixilis the Adversary, 4 copies of the Oni Cult Anvil, 4 copies of, you guessed it, the Blood Tithe Harvester, 4 Meathook Massacre, 4 Voltage Surge, 4 Voldaren Epicure, 4 Goldhound, 4 Shambling Ghast, and 4 Eaten Alive. You might be asking, why Goldhound? Well, Goldhound is an interesting card. Sacrifice it and you add 1 mana of any color. It's an artifact creature, treasure dog. It has first strike and menace. So this little 1-drop gets onto the board, gives you a sacrifice target potentially for Ob Nixilis, but it also has the ability to first strike and menace and turn into mana if you're starting to get starved. Plus, it happens to be an artifact creature, which pairs nicely with the Anvil. It gives you an artifact to sacrifice in a pinch. So a lot of interesting synergy here. I'm curious to see how this deck plays with this particular iteration of it. Eaten Alive I like just because it exiles as opposed to putting stuff in the graveyard. We have 2 Den of the Bugbear, 2 Hive of the Eye Tyrant, all 4 Haunted Ridges, the only Blightstep pathway that we own, and some Takenuma and Soken-Zan to just add some spice to the base. So, relatively simple, not a huge breadth of cards, but we'll see what happens. The next 2 decks are going to focus on a card coming out of this most recent set called Fight Rigging. This deck is designed specifically to take advantage of Fight Rigging for some bomb drops. So what is Fight Rigging? Well, let's take a quick look. Fight Rigging is a 3-mana enchantment with Hideaway. Hideaway is an interesting piece. When the permanent enters the battlefield, look at the top 5 cards of your library. Exile 1 face down and put the rest on the bottom in a random order. So what that does is you get to bury it. Now, at the beginning of a combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. So right here you've got a 3-mana Luminarch Aspirant who can't be targeted by normal kill spells. Then, if you control a creature with power 7 or greater, you may play the exiled card without paying its mana cost. So not only does this grow your creatures, if you have something that gets to 7, well, you get to play that card for free, essentially. So, what do we want to bury with Fight Rigging? Well, glad you asked. The Averbrook Caretaker, 3 copies. Or Tovalar's Huntmaster, 2 copies. What else will help us with our counter growth? So, our goal is to get this creature on the board to 7 power or better, so we can play cards for free with any Fight Riggings we happen to drop. We're going to try and accomplish that with the Packsong Pump in tandem with a number of wolves. So this card will go off with the Ascended Pack Leader, the Werewolf Pack Leader, the Cemetery Prowler, or if we absolutely have to just grind our way up to 7 mana, or 6 mana, the Averbrook Caretaker and Tovalar's Huntmaster. Other cards to help us on this growth track, Dormant Grove. This is an enchantment from Crimson Vow. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Then if that creature has toughness 6 or greater, transform Dormant Grove. Why is that fun and cool? Well, because when the Dormant Grove enters the battlefield as a creature Treefolk the Gnarled Grove Strider, other creatures you control have Vigilance. And as I'm looking at this deck list, I'm realizing we're missing a very important card. Kodama of the West Tree. So we're going to put 2 of them in there. And let's see how we balance this card out. What do we take out? Let's take out an Inscription, and we'll take out a Dormant Grove, and that will now allow us to ramp out of control and thin out the lands from our deck. Because as we're piling counters on creatures across our board, Kodama gives them trample every time they impact the opponent's space. We take land out of our deck, so this is actually a worthwhile add. So look at that, folks. Something I was theory crafting in my head, which I'm excited to try on screen. We get to make adjustments right here as we talk. All right, let's see what we've got in the last slot here. The last one we're going to talk about is What Have I Done? This is the other deck taking advantage of Fight Rigging. What are we trying to get out with Fight Rigging? The Hullbreaker Horror. Now, there's a card that came out in this most recent set that I am excited to try to do a couple of things with. That is the Reservoir Kraken. This is a 4-mana 6/6 Kraken with Ward 2. Now, this is like the Clack Bridge Troll. At the beginning of each combat, if the Reservoir Kraken is untapped, any opponent may tap an untapped creature they control. And if they do, the Kraken gets tapped and creates a 1/1 bluefish creature token with this creature can't be blocked. Why is that important? Well, we're throwing counters like mad across our board. So where do we want to throw counters? Why not on an unblockable little fish? A 1/1 fish isn't so scary, but a 5/5, 6/6, 7/7 unblockable fish is pretty scary. So how are we going to do this? How are we going to build counters? Once again, we have rotated a formula around building up a Pack Song Pup. So 3 copies of Pack Leader, 4 copies of the Pup, which gets a 1/1 counter pre-combat, as long as there's another wolf or werewolf on the field. 4 copies of the Werewolf Pack Leader. Other ways we're going to try and do this as well include 2 Weaver of Harmonies, which can duplicate triggers. So if the Fight Rigging goes to apply a 1/1 counter, we can have it apply 2. 2 copies of Shigeki to help us with ramp, help us thin out our deck, or return cards from our graveyard. Some Tameo Safekeeping to protect the whole mess, and Renin 7 for ramp as well. And we are in business. This also could put down a Tree Folk, which gives us the creature with power 7 or greater. So with that, we're going to have a little bit of fun over the next few days as we record videos. We have 2 copies of the World Tree in our mana base, just so that everything can tap for everything at some point down the line. And that will just be some fun that we're going to try and have here. So I hope you enjoyed this video. We might skip some of the deck tech stuff going forward. I might do a quick on-screen flash, but then refer back to this video for the deck tech analysis and breakdown, and then I'll link or just copy and paste the deck list into the descriptions of the coming videos so that if you want to give them a try, you can just copy and paste them, and if you have the cards already, then you'll have the ability to do so. With that, though, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you stopping by. My name is Furyan from the Florida Men Gaming, signing off for tonight or today, whenever you happen to be watching this, and I hope you have a good one in the arena.